You live.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil. My name is Steve Poikinen. I am joined this evening by my co-hosts Andrew Smith and Misty Winston. Before we get to our guest this evening, let me run through the numbers as we have them today. It is 3,500, 3,500 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. 453 days since the WikiLeaks publisher was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the United Kingdom for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. 62 days remain until the second round of the daylight kidnapping extraordinary rendition show trial of Julian Assange. Um, 1,130 days of incarceration for reality winner. And on the plus side, 116 days of freedom for Chelsea Manning. Um, Speaking of the rendition hearing, Action for Assange is currently crowdfunding so that we can get back for all 3 weeks of these hearings. And by back, I mean to Washington, D.C. We've got some fantastic partners that we're going to be doing coordinated events and actions and panels and teach ins and all kinds of stuff with. So if you can, please donate to that GoFundMe. If you can't, that's fine. We understand, but please share the link. Get it out there far and wide, and help it stay circulating. We're about 30% of the way, which means we are about 70% short of our goal. So every little bit helps, and again, if you can, please do. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Andrew with this week's call to action.
Yeah, so this week, AMLO, who is the
Almo.
president, Almo, who is the president down in Mexico, President Obrador, he is meeting with Donald Trump on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. I'm not sure on the exact time. But so what we decided to do this week with our action is to send emails to all of the embassies and consulates throughout the United States and the ones that we could find around the world, the Mexican consulates, just asking them to pass a message on to President Obrador to ask him to talk to Donald Trump about Julian Assange. There's lots of ways that we can word it. There's lots of things that you can say. I just ask that people be respectful. President Obrador is someone who has spoken out in favor of Julian Assange. And this was actually in 2020. It was just a few months ago, where the organized labor in Mexico had managed to apply enough pressure to him that he came out with a statement about the abuse of Julian Assange's human rights and the threat to press freedom. So what I would like to do, because this whole trade deal thingy is what they're celebrating, which is directly involved with that organized labor. So emailing these consulates and asking President Obrador if he could bring up Julian Assange and ask for his immediate or demand his immediate freedom. I think that would be an awesome action, sending those emails out. We've had tons of people across the world do it already. I know personally I've had about like 13, 14 just friends in my normal life that I sent it to that were like, hey, please do this, and they got it out. So please join in. Send it to people that you think might care a little bit, because it's pretty easy to copy and paste and then just type a body of an email saying, hey, please tell the president to talk to Trump about letting Julian go. And it can go a lot further than most people think right now.
So I suppose with that, we will introduce our guest this evening, returning guest to the Free Assange Vigil, stand-up comedian and just stand-up guy. We are pleased to welcome back to the show Krish Mohan. How you doing, Krish? It's good to see you again, man.
It's good to see you guys too. Thanks for having me. That's a very I like that intro. It's a good intro.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've been complimented on my introductions in the past. Originally, when I first started doing my show, I had these like super long paragraphs, and it was just it got a little tedious. I found out the short and sweet, and
Yeah.
it goes a long way.
I've definitely gotten some crazy intros that I literally had somebody read my entire bio that I sent them once, and it's like this long paragraph, and I was just like, don't. I thought you were just looking for highlights, not just reading the whole fucking thing. So yeah, that was it. That was. I always get weird about like very nice intros, like I'm just not used to having very nice intros. So whenever I get them, I'm like, that's really cool. Look at this person being all professional and doing their job right. This is great. It's what the world should be.
And how are you doing today, Missy?
I am doing good. And actually, Krish, you were okay. So I haven't been on the live stream for, I don't know, it's probably been like a month, guys. And you were actually one of the guests that was on the last time I was supposed to be on. And so now I'm coming back and you're a guest again. So I'm really excited about that. Actually, your special that you did is hilarious. I love, like, don't you have like an aunt and uncle that live in Columbus?
Yeah, well, yeah, I used to. Yeah, that was my ex-wife's aunt and uncle. Yeah.
So I'm from Columbus. So yeah, that was.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was super bummed that I wasn't able to be on last time you were on. So yeah, your special was really funny. So.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that was it's interesting because that is one of the it's like this long 13-minute story about basically my conservative uncle and aunt from my from my ex-wife's side, and they were not understanding, and people were just I think what takes them back is like I did try to do my best of like not making fun of them because they were trying, because I think I might have been like the first like real immigrant that they met that knew like what the immigration system was. So I was like, okay, credit to the fact that you're trying. That's pretty cool. I'll give you points for that one.
Totally. What was that special called? People should check it out. It is really neat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's called Empathy on Sale. So that one came out last June, and then just about a month ago, I put out a new album called Politely Angry, which also has a very long story about going to a temple and why religion and capitalism always kind of merge to make this unholy love child of just doom. That's
almost 2 years ago. On one of the very I think it was the second time Placone was on my show. The title of it was "Is Capitalism a Religion?" And because it was the theme of the interview, and we got pretty in depth on it, man. It was it was thorough. I'll say that. I enjoy it when Ron's on. He's been on. Oh, I think he's tied for most appearances, or Elizabeth Voss has him by like one.
Oh, awesome! Oh, I love Ron. I've known Ron for like 10 years. Ron's the guy that got me on the road, and I've had that same conversation with him too, because he read the Bible like cover to cover. He's read the Bible. So one of the first tours that I did with Ron, we did like a short little 4 day run down south. He had just finished reading it, like maybe like 3 or 4 days before I came into. This is when he was living in Nashville, and I just remember like he went pretty deep with like anytime religion would come up. It's like I haven't read the Bible cover to cover, but he had, and so like him going kind of really deep into. Like, and this scripture says this part, and that's really weird, and then they contradict over here, and like, and it was just really kind of funny to see him getting into it. But that is one of those things. Is like so in the album that I just put out last month, I do have like I talk about how capitalism and religion are like kind of intertwined together, and you can see it in certain places. And where I saw it was in India. Because I grew up there and I went there with my ex and everything, and like we were visiting a temple, but it is kind of a religion in and of itself is like the real religion in America isn't Christianity or Catholicism. It's money. It's capitalism. That is what it is. The Fed is essentially the temple to capitalism in and of itself, right? But it also controls the mechanisms of it. I like what Dr. Richard Wolff calls it a creature of capitalism.
Okay.
Which I kind of dig. I like that term. But that's when people get mad the most, right? Is like when you go after capitalism, like people get really mad because you're kind of attacking their religion in a sense. Like well,
think about how our money's created. You know, it's an appropriations bill more often than not gets signed off on, goes to the Federal Reserve, some keystrokes are entered on a computer, and then that money appears in other Federal Reserve banks and other banks. It is a faith-based system.
Oh, totally.
And it's a supernatural belief system to walk around, I don't know, I guess, extolling the virtues of capitalism or shaming those sinners who do not believe in the one true God that is the almighty US dollar. The parallels are all right there. It ticks off all the important boxes. It does.
It really does. Yeah. And honestly, when you said, look at the way that our money works, I just thought you were going to, like, I don't know, say like a Harry Potter spell. Because it kind of is created out of, but you're right. There is nothing, like, we don't have like a gold standard or there's nothing like tangible backing up the money. It literally is the word of the Fed. Like, the Fed says that this is worth something, and here's how much it's worth, and here's how much you are worth, beside it. And that's the way things run, and everybody just goes, okay. And it's like, no, like, what? You don't want to.
Well, if you look at the letter that Julian actually, or the phone call that Julian had with Vanis, I believe his name is Giannis. With Giannis, they were even talking about like the wretched state of corporate zombieism at this point, that we literally like moved past what anyone who wants capitalism could recognize as it. Like, the example that they used was Hertz went bankrupt and became worth $1 billion as soon as it became worth nothing, which is just that fundamental fucked upness of having war criminals also responsible for running monetary systems.
Yeah, I mean, one of the people that was really pushing for the Fed is J.D. Rockefeller, who is notorious for getting rich off both sides in both world wars, right? So it's like, yeah, that sort of shit has been happening from the start. Like, if you really look at the history of the Fed, is war profiteering is 100% a part of centralizing the American economy. Like, and then once it got centralized, it just added like war profiteering to it, which is, you know, the dude was selling like standardized oil to the Nazis and making money fighting the Nazis. And then you have who's it, George W. Bush's dad, who is the VP of the bank that was money laundering for the Nazis. And it's just like, you know, like, all of this stuff goes hand in hand, and people wonder why, like, you know, why people want to replace capitalism, why they want to get rid of it as a system. And it's just like, this is why, like, this is why we don't want it, because it supports things like fucking Nazis, like the OG ones, like the first iteration of them, not the sequel that came out, you know. But and then they tried to do it again with Vietnam, is, you know, like they were trying to make money off of both sides. And I think that was Rockefeller too, is that family loves to make money off of both sides of the war.
Yeah. If you ever want to freak yourself out a little bit, and this is for you, Chris, and everyone listening, go look up a picture of Aleister Crowley and a picture of Barbara Bush, and put them side by side.
Oh man.
It is theorized that Barbara Bush is in fact the illegitimate daughter of Aleister Crowley.
I'm gonna have to do that in the daytime.
Well, Paul
You should do that at
Revere-
like 2 minutes before
Like, I'm
the
gonna do
stroke
it
of
right
midnight
now.
with no other lights on in the house. You should have you should have 5 candles that form sort of a pentagram type shape. And you should also drag out whatever grimory or old text of magical learning that you may have just kind of stashed away at your place there. That's when you should look at that picture and do it like in a mirror too.
Oh, I'm looking at it right now. That's crazy.
Ain't it though?
Yeah. I couldn't wait. I had to do it right now.
Much less
Dude.
impressive, Jack Black looks like Paul Revere. I think that's interesting.
And Keanu Reeves looks like Charlemagne because he's an immortal.
Welcome to the Free Assange Vigil, everyone.
That's fair.
So to give her a shout out, if we can pull up our first little article here, over the weekend there was tons of events around the world for Julian. But I want to give a special thank you. I know we've said it probably about 1 million times now, but to Alex Hills. The World Socialist website actually published an article about her protests and everything else that was going on at the time. So do we want to jump into that a little bit, Steve?
Sure. Oh, it says page not found. The link that you put in the show docs.
Put an L at the end.
Click the link just below it.
Just put an L at the end. One of the letters isn't in there.
Oh, I see that now. Do. There we go. Sorry, so my camera's been messing up quite a bit, and I had to like steal my wife's computer in order to work the camera. So I've got like the articles that are just right over here, so it's gonna look like I'm staring at something that isn't the camera, and it's because that's how I'm going to read. Vigils in New Zealand demand freedom for Julian Assange. The supporters of Julian Assange attended vigils in Wellington and Auckland on July 2nd and July 3rd. The events called by Free Assange New Zealand were part of a global protests marking the WikiLeaks founder's 49th birthday, his second spent in horrific conditions in London's maximum security Belmarsh prison. Candles for Assange, a network of protest groups, announced that events were held in at least 30 cities across 16 countries, including Australia, Germany, Britain, the US, Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. The UK government is seeking to hand Assange over to the United States to be imprisoned for the rest of his life. The courageous publisher and journalist has been persecuted over the past decade by successive US governments and their allies, including Britain and Australia, for revealing war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, illegal surveillance by the CIA, and Washington's anti-democratic machinations throughout the world. I don't know if anybody wants to pick up on this or not. It's a fairly lengthy article that, goes more into the background of the story rather than discusses who individual protesters are. But I can't thank Alex enough, man. She put together an amazing 27 straight hours of coverage. Sleepy Josh, who does the ones and twos here, was I think awake for almost all of that. You're a beast, man. You're a beast. That and just I hope that the next time that Alex throws a birthday event for Julian, he can show up to it. I really do.
This is the second digital march that Alex has hosted like that in, I want to say, a little over 2 or 3 months. The last one was on World Press Freedom Day at the end of May, I believe that was. So super big credit to her because she does absolutely amazing work getting all of those events organized, published, coordinated, and on a stream. So,
World Press Freedom Day is May 3rd, Andre. It's also Taylor's birthday, and she would be very, very heartbroken.
well, I remembered that.
She knew. She's so sad. You
So
want to
one of
make
the
a
cool-
blonde girl cry,
Well,
Andre? Do
one of
you?
the cool things from the stream, while we were live streaming, I wasn't on the stream, but while Alex and Josh were going, they connected with somebody that was actually outside of Belmarsh prison, and the guard at Belmarsh actually came out and said that he would let Julian know about everyone that was outside celebrating his birthday for him, because they had like a legitimate party outside of the prison for him. So I thought that was a really, really cool thing.
That's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. In like the parade of shit that they keep throwing at him, it's like at least there's one guard that's like, hey, there's like people that love you.
He was one of the top guys there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was in a suit.
Good job, guys. Like that's fucking awesome. So
Speaking of suits, real quick, I feel like I'm overdressed and I'm about ready to go grab a red and black flannel.
This is my robe.
Fancy. You're extremely fancy. Like, look at us. What's like the t-shirt, flannels, and then Steve's like,
can you kick us into Brady Bunch view for a second, Josh, just so
There's
everyone can
a-
appreciate Chris and I?
If it helps, there's like a ratty sleeveless system of a down shirt on underneath this one.
that's hilarious, dude.
Not planned. This
No.
this was serendipity, is what I believe. What the kids
I
call
try to convince Steve to wear his red flannel with mine all the time, but he won't do it. So I appreciate you.
You totally should. You totally should.
We're both doing the beards for Assange thing. I feel like if we went as twinsies for the vigil, it's a little bit too much for me. It really is.
So we do have a story here that I wanted to talk with you about, Krish, because last time we were on, we had I can't remember her name. I know Steve will know it and yell at me for it. But we had the city, the city councilwoman out of Australia.
She was
and
awesome.
She was. And we were talking about how Australia doesn't have a Bill of Rights the same way that we do. They don't have press freedom. They don't have freedom of expression the way that we know it here in the U.S. And that was something that I remember was really like flabbergasting.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, how are you guys a country? It's
Yeah.
nuts. Like, how have you guys made it this far? It's nuts.
If you don't have a Bill of Rights or a First Amendment, how can your government trample all over it?
Yeah, I was like, what are you guys doing to protesters? At least over here, they're like, you can express yourself as we tear gas you. Like,
yeah. And check your tone.
check.
Civility.
Don't be so loud about the fact that we shot you with rubber bullets.
Right.
Cops have very sensitive ears.
These things are like Coke cans with points on them, man. They're not fucking around with those.
Yeah, my buddy Vincent Didiato, he's a very funny comedian in Pittsburgh. I think he posted one of them and he goes, "Oh my God, these are like the most dangerous dildos I've ever seen in my life." Like, they're massive. They were ridiculous. Yeah. But
assault sex toys.
They are assault sex.
And if they say that they're tactical, they can add another $35 to them.
But I understand. I did kind of like. I couldn't. It just didn't line up that they were a modernized country without a Bill of Rights. Like, it didn't make any sense to me because I think, and I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure like most countries have them. Like, I'm pretty sure most countries have like a Bill of Rights of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, press freedom is something that's a little like it varies country by country. There isn't a whole lot of uniformity. And even in the UK, like there's a more direct relationship between news outlets and their spy agencies, and they get this thing called a D notice if they're about ready to, or if they print something that might be a little bit embarrassing to the collective Trevors at the GCHQ. And in Australia, it's basically open season on journalists, and it happened to ABC, Australian Broadcasting Company. It happened to them, where not only did their office get raided, and a lot of their computers and devices were taken out of it, but one of the journalists was actually up for, or potentially could have been prosecuted. And that's what this story is about. I'll break it down a little bit. And we've been fortunate enough to speak to the man at the heart of all of this, David McBride, a couple of times. He should be coming back on the Vigil relatively soon. It would be nice to have him next week, because we're going to have Marjorie Cohn on next Tuesday. And that will be absolutely wonderful in and of itself. But per this article from from the Australian Broadcasting Company, it's been more than a year since federal police raided ABC headquarters looking for leaked secret documents on which that series was based. The Afghan files is what they're talking about. Last week, the AFP finally recommended the Commonwealth DPP consider charging one of the journalists, Dan Oakes, while the others, Sam Clark, will not be prosecuted. Journalists around the country tweeted their outrage, and ABC News boss Gavin Morris leapt to the defense of his men. He said, "The journalism that Dan did and Sam did here was good journalism. None of the facts of the story have been disputed, and all these guys were doing was doing their jobs professionally as journalists." Last week, the head of the SAS admitted that Australian war crimes in Afghanistan did take place, and no less than 55 alleged breaches of the rules of war are being examined by the Brereton inquiry, expected to report later this month, after which prosecutions are almost certain to follow. So I'm going to pause there for a moment, because we've got a condition where, unlike the United States, it looks like they're trying to go for some accountability for the people who are responsible for giving the orders for these war crimes, if not the people who carried them out. And that is very, very new to me in a Five Eyes country, where there might be some sort of accountability on this level. I would love to know what you guys think about that.
Well, I also kind of love that they're finally standing up for journalism too, because they've been pretty silent while, one of their own, Julian Assange, is, being tortured. And so it's nice that finally that they're speaking out about this clear attack on a free press. It's happening everywhere. I mean, we saw what happened to Max Blumenthal. We see what's happening with Julian. There's been a very noticeable ramp up of the attacks on journalism. So I'm excited that they're finally, kind of standing together and speaking out, against this.
Well, and real quick too, to add to what you're saying, Misty, they also, the Bolsonaro government went after Glenn Greenwald in sort of a micro fashion of exactly what is being done to Julian Assange, and tried to get him for the same type of, conspiracy to commit computer intrusion charge that Julian just saw an expanded part of, or saw that charge become expanded with this ridiculous superseding indictment the other week. Glenn Greenwald, fortunately, and maybe it's because of the way that Brazil protects journalists, or maybe it's because it's just such a trumped up and ridiculous charge. But the Bolsonaro government backed off of that.
That's why I thought they backed off of it, is because it just seemed so ridiculous. And I I might be wrong, but I felt like they were trying to take him to court at one point, and then it just seemed too much of a hassle to try to do that. So they just kind of tried to like bully him a bit.
Yeah, there were two separate instances. There was one that happened like 6 or 8 months prior, and the result of it was a court order saying the Bolsonaro government could not come after Glenn Greenwald. And then 6 or 8 months down the road, they came after Glenn Greenwald again. But again, the charge is just so, I guess, spurious is the right word there.
Well, and let's be honest, though, they don't even really need for there to be like a legitimate charge or anything. What they're doing now is kind of manufacturing consent for the continuation of these attacks on journalism. And so they're kind of just chipping away. It's like, oh, we're gonna bully Glenn Greenwald. And if nothing else, that kind of inspires other journalists to just shut up, because look at the shit that you have to go through if you make the wrong people mad. So it's kind of like the proverbial head on a stake. It's like, look, this is what happens when you mess with us. And I think it's just like little by little, they're trying to go after everybody and make it seem like it's okay to do that.
And that's not particularly a new kind of point of attack or anything. They were doing, you can go back to, I guess, the 70s with the Panthers, like the Black Panthers, they did that with all the time, where they basically like hung up the Black Panthers on a bunch of legal charges. But it didn't work because their survival programs still continued to flourish. And then a bunch of like Hollywood actors and actresses were like, oh, this seems like a cause I would like to publicly support. And then the charges were all, they weren't dropped, but they were exonerated. Like they were just like, oh, there's no proof that they did what you claimed that they did. So I feel like what they're doing now is that they kind of found this weird loophole that they grabbed Julian Assange on, and then they were like, "Oh, let's just try to do that for everybody that we don't like." But it's like it doesn't work. It like barely works for Julian. Like like it's barely a defensible thing to say that they have anything on Julian, especially after the fact that they legitimately spied on the dude. Meeting with his lawyers. It's like at this point, why is this even a trial? Like there's so many things that are clearly illegal with what they did and how they arrested him. Like it doesn't make any sense. But they're using him as an example. And what my hope is like maybe in the future we can use this story as an example where people like will back up journalists and stuff. Like maybe that could be a thing that we learn from and continue down the line with. That would be pretty cool. I'd like to see that happen a lot more. But more people aren't going to really know about it unless stories like this get out there, which is part of the reason why channels like this are so important, is because you guys do put the stories out there and talk about it and continue to put the story and shed some light on the story rather. But corporate media isn't going to talk about any of this shit. Like even I'm sure in Australia, the corporate media in Australia is not going to pick up a story like this and say one word about it.
Another thing about Australia, Chris, that'll blow your mind, is it is legal for the Australian federal government to take and edit news records.
What?
Yep.
Yeah, how this place is fucking wild to me.
It's nuts. Yeah.
It's
definitely
crazy.
the outback.
Yeah,
I think Australia, and I might be wrong, but they were one of the last countries to actually break British imperial rule. And that it seems to me like they never fully ceded their revolution all the way to break imperial power.
Well, I mean, it started as a prison
colony. Yeah.
At least for the white people that were there. There were Aborigines that had been there since, if you listen to them, since the beginning of time. But yeah, I mean, if you start your country out as a prison colony, there's going to be, some latent kind of the same ethos and for them to be a part of the Five Eyes Global Information Sharing Network. I mean, my God, how many times have we spoken to someone from Australia who's been on this program or has been on my show, and they've referred to Australia as just a vassal state of the United States, and that Scott Morrison is little more than just a bagman for Mike Pompeo at the State Department. And that's not to knock any of our Aussie listeners right now. I'm just repeating back what I have heard from your people. You know,
but that's also, I mean, that like that's essentially saying like the people up at the top don't represent the citizens of this country because they're not really working for the citizens of this country as civil servants, right? I mean, you could that statement could be said about America too. It's like when people freak out about Russia and they start talking shit about Putin and everything, and it's just like, but that's not everybody in Russia. Like, he might not be an upstanding dude, but I'm sure the working class bartender, you know, like that person might be okay. Like that might be a good person. So it's the same thing of like when people come out and make statements like, oh, you know, they're a proxy government for this country, or they're engaged in the military industrial complex for America in this specific way. I don't know. I maybe that's just me. Is I find that there is a little bit of a separation of when you talk about like the State Department or anybody in some sort of a government position. To me, it's like most of those people don't represent the values of the actual people that live in that country, just like our leaders don't. Like, I wouldn't say that Nancy Pelosi is somebody that represents my fucking values.
What, you mean if you were read in on torture in 2003, you wouldn't stay silent about it? That blows my mind, Krish.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those arguments, but that is the thing, is just like, again, that goes back to how the media talks about it, is that they make the citizens of the country just as bad as the leadership of the country. So if it's a country we don't have good relationships with, then the people are, and then it just spreads into xenophobia. And it's like, you saw this stuff in fucking 2001, is like, you made all brown countries the same, and then we're like, oh, we're blowing up these brown people who tried to blow us up, and then it's like everybody that has my skin tone is somehow the enemy, and it's just like, you don't know me. Like, you know. And can you stop mixing the stereotypes? Am I a terrorist or am I the kid from Temple of Doom? You gotta
be consistent.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
You can't mix up your racism.
Right? No, it's just bad form.
Yeah.
I remember right after 9/11 happened, I was in Tuxedo Park, New York for the Renaissance Festival there, which is literally right across from the Tappan Zee Bridge, and then you're in Manhattan. And at our corner store, the people who owned it were Sikhs. And because the gentleman had a wrap on his head, like, they were immediately targeted, windows busted out, death threats. And it's like, but do you not understand that a Sikh is so far removed from A, a Muslim, B, a jihadi Muslim? Like, what the hell are the disconnect there? Is just monumental, and I felt really, really bad for those guys. And then you read that in that year, there were a ridiculous amount of attacks on Sikhs all over the country. It's just fucking, I don't know, heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. And we I mean, in the 70s, I'm pretty sure like India was going after Sikhs as well. So you know, let's not make America feel special about that one. India was doing it first, you guys. We were hating on the Sikhs first. We got to that discrimination before everybody else. But no, I mean, yeah, you know, and if you learn about the Sikhs, and I got to talk to somebody from the Sikh American Legal Defense Fund, or I think it's Legal Education Defense Fund, SalDef. About 2 years ago, I got to talk to one of the gentlemen from that organization just about like, hey, tell me about Sikhism, and because I'd met a few Sikhs, and I never really went down the rabbit hole of that philosophy, but they're badass, man. Like they're all about like peace and community and solidarity, and they have a sword. In traditional Sikh art, like they have a sword, but the sword is for defensive purposes, right? Like it's this, again, to bring up the Black Panthers, is like the reason the Black Panthers decided to arm themselves is for defensive purposes. Is that if the cops were going to come and like try to fuck up their free breakfast for children program, like they had a way to defend themselves. And that's basically the same thing that the Sikhs were doing. And part of that, I think, is probably because like they were also probably getting fucked with by a bunch of other exploitative oligarchical power structures. So they were like, we gotta, we're all about community and we want people to accept, but there's some people that don't accept us, and then they come after us and try to destroy what we built, which also what we built is for everybody. Like we're this non-exclusionary philosophy, and then so it's like but then they take the sword, and it's the same thing that they did with the Panthers, is like they look at the guns and they go, well, they're dangerous, and it's like, no, you're dangerous. They're helping. Like they're being nice, and you're coming in with a fucking like, why do you need a military when people are trying to feed kids? And that's a question that nobody asks. And that, again, to kind of bring it back to the media, is I do feel like that the media is sort of the propaganda arm of all of this stuff. And the media perpetuates this lie. They like to perpetuate these larger stories of, oh, these guys are dangerous and this is all scary. And, and they're doing it for ratings and money, and not just money for themselves, but they're doing it for, the investors and all that other shit. So, which is part of the reason why I like watching shit on YouTube, because I know, who's funding you guys except the people in the chats. Like,
no, you're absolutely right, man. The thing that kills me about self-funded or viewer-funded independent media is that far too many of that crowd, and that's the sandbox that I play in too, but far too many people in that crowd are using mainstream content as the baseline material for their show. And there's all these just incredible independent journalists out there that aren't I guess whipping boys for an agenda set by sociopathic pedophiles, that you that's who you should be leading with when you've got a story to break. And the template seems to be play a clip from the mainstream media, wag your finger at it, and then play another clip from the mainstream media and wag your finger at it, when you could be talking to, I don't know, Vanessa Peely or Eva Bartlett or Whitney Webb or Caitlin Johnson, like all these people.
Or Krish Mohan.
Yeah, or Krish Mohan, famed writer and newscaster, journalist. Yeah. But no, it's just I got to get that out, because it really does, man. It just twists me knickers, and I
it's so
like
true though. Like we really need to address like how bad independent, like some of the shows that you're talking about, the people that it's like, oh, look at the stupid thing that Rachel Maddow said. I don't care what Rachel Maddow said. I have no desire to, get inside their brains. They don't matter. They're irrelevant to what we should be trying to accomplish. Do you know what I mean? Like we have to fight. And I bring this up all the time. I feel like every time I'm on somebody's show or whatever, I talk about this article, but Caitlin Johnstone has an amazing article out about narrative management, narrative control. And that's the biggest battle that we face. We can't do anything else until we address changing the narrative. When the crazy psychopath pedophiles have control of information and the messaging, we're in trouble for everything else. And I tell people all the time, support independent media, support and good independent media, like the people who are actually out there. Stop sending $27 to Bernie Sanders and send it to, some gray zone or, whoever you like. Just
yeah. I agree. I had a conversation because in the beginning of all the pandemic stuff, it's like I had so many comedians and musicians that essentially lost their livelihood, just like I did. I'm a touring comic. I tour around 40 to 45 weeks out of the year, and for the last 4 months, I've been doing shows I've been doing these like interview shows. I've been doing more live streams, and I've been doing virtual shows and pivoting to like this digital landscape. And I started talking about other people that were also doing the same thing. I was like, here's somebody cool that you should support, like Eleanor Goldfield. You should support her new movie, and you should support Jimmy Dore and Lee Camp and Ron Placone and all these people. And I would put up their Patreons and stuff like that because I'm just trying to get people like an easy way to go and find all this stuff, right? And there was still a little bit of pushback of like, well, I don't know who to support. I don't know where this is going, and this, that, and the third. And it's just, I look at it as, look, what do you have that you don't need right now? Like, do you have Netflix and cable? Like, maybe you don't need cable, because other than like Star Trek Picard, like what the fuck do you really need to watch on CBS? Is it nothing? Because it's probably nothing, right? Like you maybe I'll give you Star Trek Discovery, but like, so give up the cable. Like make friends with some weird nerdy teenager who's going to teach you how to hack into, a free streaming site. And then you can watch all of the NCISs for free. And then now you have, you just saved what, 80, 90, I don't know how much cable is anymore, like $7,000 a month. Like you saved a shit ton of money, and now you can parse that out. And it's just, to me, I was just like, am I teaching you money management right now?
Well, you have new platforms that are on the horizon that make it a little bit easier too, like Rockfin.
Yes.
They have about 100,000 active subscribers right now, or active viewers, unique viewers, which isn't a ton, but it's enough to build a community and get creators going. So I was really excited because there's a lot of new like Jimmy Dore, for example, has moved over there. And the way that they do it is, every time a subscription is made, you pick whatever creator you like the most, you give them $10, and then you get access to all of the other creators like Netflix. So you basically get to pick who you like the most, but then still support everybody with your viewership. That still helps generate additional revenue and things like that. So
Yeah,
it's
I
a
love
pretty cool.
Can we not, let's also mention that it's not even just about donating to like the people that you enjoy watching, just sharing videos, liking, commenting on, like, especially on YouTube, anything that you can do, sharing links, emailing it to your friends, whatever. I know that everybody's in like tough financial positions, or like even donating to the GoFundMe that you guys have to go to DC and do the 3 weeks of direct action. Like, that's the kind of stuff that, even if you're just sharing the links or whatever, I know that everybody's in a tough financial place, but there's always ways that you can try to lift each other's voices up. So, I mean, get creative but it's not just about money, like even just sharing videos or, liking or commenting on a stream somewhere, all that stuff helps.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And so to kind of push back on an earlier point that you were making, see, is like, yes, there is a lot of, here's the thing Rachel Maddow said, isn't that crazy? To me, that stuff is, I get bored with it. And then you kind of have these like, the other thing I get bored with is like internal beefs between other content creators. Like, I guess last year there was something going on between Steven Crowder and some other guy from Vox, and that story blew up and it was everywhere. And I was just like, is there anything else happening that you guys could be talking about? But why are we we get it. Steven Crowder's kind of a dick. Like, yeah, that's his thing. That's like his brand. That's what he does.
Yeah.
You know,
I think what the reason that blew up though is because Crowder got completely demonetized for it.
that's what. Yeah, that's
And
what
it was one of those things where, like, as vile as Crowder is, you know,
Who's next?
in what has become the public square, these monopolistic tech companies that are basically have merged with the government should not be arbiters of what is and isn't allowable speech within this public
Yeah.
square.
Censorship
But,
is
yeah,
bad. Period.
Crowder's a dick.
Not good.
Yeah.
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 Of course he is. Of course he's vile, but that doesn't mean that we should have some nameless, faceless, techno whatever bullshit corporation. They don't get to decide. That there should be like a process. There should be, you know, it should not be some random tech company deciding who gets to say what, when, and where. No, it's not good.
Yeah, yeah. But to the point, I know I keep kind of extending my point, but I look at it as, if you look at something like, if Rachel Maddow decides to talk about Medicare for all, right, and she does it, but if you're looking at it as, this is how the media covers, or rather, this is how corporate media covers something like Medicare for all, versus this is what Medicare for all actually is, and here's the reason why they're serving that narrative. Like, if you do, like, to me, I like the ones where it is a little bit of media criticism. It is a little bit of like, hey, this is how the narrative gets bent and twisted. This is how they're looking at somebody like Julian Assange, and look at the words that they're using. They call him a hacker. They don't call him a publisher. You know, you have things like they're using, like how Wikipedia has I guess they're like not a reliable source, but the New York Times is, who has, and I saw Eleanor pointed this out, and Eleanor Goldfield pointed this out in a live stream the other day. The reason why WikiLeaks is a unreliable source on Wikipedia is because they've never retracted a story, but they failed to mention that they've never had to retract a story. You know, where like the New York Times has retracted a story because they fucking had to, because they got something wrong, because they twisted the narrative and then got caught with egg on their face, right? But pointing that stuff out, I'm fine with. But doing the whole like, look how dumb she is kind of thing is just like, because there are still people that listen to people like Rachel Maddow, and they're very compassionate, empathetic, wonderful people. It's just they're getting their news from like corporate warmongers.
What's more dangerous are the people who think that Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks are like legitimate sources for
Absolutely.
Indian news, you know, because those are the people that should be in our column right now and should be, you know, taking part in a series of global actions for Julian's birthday. But because they've found this bias confirming bubble where new information is looked at, or information that runs counter to what they've been told by Brooks or Cedar or these guys, is viewed instantly as either a right-wing plot or outright conspiracy, even if it's coming from the left. You know what I mean? And it's like a deactivation, I don't know, sinkhole. You know, and there's a lot of people that do Sam Cedar's show just from like a couple of ticks more to the left.
Yeah,
and it always infuriates me because you've trained your audience to only respond to content that has to do with the horse race. The horse race is fucking rigged, but you have trained your audience to only respond to that, which means that they tune out all other information that's deemed superfluous because it's not about AOC's badass clapback tweet today.
Yeah. Oh man, I you know, and I'll be honest, is I have gotten caught up in that sort of shit before. Is like during like last summer, especially like during all of the debates and stuff, is like I was going to do it anyway, but I was just like kind of breaking down the debates and talking about like, here's what this person talked about and why this narrative is weird and look, the way they responded to this is bizarre. But it was like, but those got hits. So then people kind of, I think a little bit got used to me talking about just these electoral politics, where I do talk about some deeper issues and things of that sort, but it's surrounding electoral politics. And that's not I'm like, that's not, this is just me yelling in my car, you guys. Like, and I saw the debates and that's crazy. And I have to yell in my car about it, but I didn't want that to be the thing that I talk about all the time. But that was the thing that was getting the most amount of reactions. And I think, because you see the thumbs up and the comments and you go, oh, I'm doing a good job, right? Like we're kind of programmed to do that. And I definitely went in that direction for a bit. And I was like, but this isn't what I want to fucking talk about all the time. Like there's other bigger things to talk about. And if, to the earlier point that I made is I do like the idea of like, figuring out how to be critical of the media, figuring out how to push back against a narrative so that when you come up to somebody that has only listened to Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson or Don Lemon or whoever the fuck else is on these networks, is you can go, oh yeah, they're doing this because of XYZ. Listen to the way that they use this specific word in this specific context. And that's not really what it is. Here's some other sources, blah, 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 blah. And you can kind of have like a little bit of like a critical thinking debate rather than just, you can just go fuck yourself, fella, is, like a little discourse. You can have a little discourse with them. So that's part of the reason why I'm okay with, look at the words that they're using. And this is how the media likes to twist the narrative and manipulate certain things. So we can learn how to talk about that sort of stuff and maybe just veer a little bit to the discourse side. So, if I rant and rave about CNN, like it's not the end of it doesn't mean that I'm a fucking Fox News fan.
Right. No, I guess my whole thing is that that should be a step on your path to better understanding the world around you. And what happens far too often is that people will go like 2 ticks in one direction, find a content creator and be like, well, that's it for me. I don't need to watch anything else ever again. I don't need to check out any other shows. I've got this channel that confirms every bias that I have, and it's my warm, happy place. And since I don't go to church, this is the closest thing that I'm going to get to, being in a group of people who all think and feel and believe the same things. And then they just stay there.
Yeah. And I think what Chris was talking about earlier too with, content, like he was saying that he noticed that like the AOC clapback stuff would get a lot of likes. And I think that that's a pervasive problem in independent media, because it's so easy to and I get it, like that this is how they make their income now. Like but it sucks because it feels like they all start off with good intentions, but then eventually they realize that there's, a broader audience that if they don't talk about controversial issues and if they try to kind of float in the middle, but also, it's like they self-censor just because they don't want to lose the clicks and the subscriptions and all that shit. And it sucks.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I remember seeing it with the State of the Union address that happened earlier this year. Was that earlier this year that the State of the Union happened? Okay, I don't know. Everything seems like
it was earlier this year.
Everything seems like it's 7,000 years ago. But everybody freaked out because Nancy Pelosi ripped up the speech at the end. Right. And everyone's like, oh, man, this is a badass. Look at her being part of the resistance and blah, 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 and all this other shit. It's like, but nobody except like a handful of independent media, including, you know, channels like the Gray Zone, like Aaron Mate was one of the first people to point this out that I remember, where he pointed out, like, did you see how she was applauding for the fake president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido, the CIA coup president, Juan Guaido? Like, she stood up and clapped, and they went back and watched that thing. And it was just like, if she would have gotten up faster, she might have launched herself into his dick. Like, that's how quickly she fucking stood up. But nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that. There is a bipartisanship in, like, I don't know, changing the regime of a country. And I even hate using the word regime in terms of Venezuela, because I don't look at what Maduro's doing as a regime. Like, you don't have to love the guy, but who are we to say whether he's the leader of that country or not, when he was elected in an election system that's fucking better than yours? But nobody had talked about any of that. Was sort of my point, is like, it's a handful of people that were like, he's legally elected in an election system that's been verified by the, you know, the International Election Committee and everything. And it's just like, or international election observers. And even Jimmy Carter came out and was just like, yeah, this guy's legit. And then, like, but you have people like Pelosi and Chuck Schumer that still won't accept him, that still go along with what the CIA tells you and what the Trump administration says about it. But, you know, some of these other independent media don't want to address that, because Venezuela there's a little bit of complexity there, and it's not a black or white thing. But then but that's whenever, to me, I'm just like, good, go learn about it. Go listen to Aaron Mate. Go listen to Max Blumenthal. Go listen to Mint Press News. See what they're saying about it, you know? Learn about it. It's complex. It's hard. It's not meant to be easy. And it's complex not because, you know, that's just sort of the way that geopolitics works or whatever. It's complex because that's how doing fucked up shit works.
Wait, though, are you telling me that I can't just defer to caucus leadership? Is that okay?
That's great. That is when the Venezuelan embassy was getting besieged, there were 3 independent media channels that had regular interviews with people that were on the ground there. And that was the Gray Zone and Lee Camp Show and me. And that's it. That's the totality. That there are people who, you know, who were risking their lives, who were being relentlessly fucked with by supporters of, you know, fake President Guaido and fake Ambassador Carlos Vecchio. And, you know, the people who were trying to bring them food were getting tackled, just relentlessly fucked with. And nobody besides 3 of us could get a camera over there or get someone on the phone. Like, are you kidding me? It was sad. And at that time, like, you know, I was a couple of months into my show. Nobody knew who the fuck I was, you know, and that's the whole point. Like, if a guy in Northern California is living in ostensibly a freaking log cabin can present this news as it happens, so can everybody else, you know, and that goes for the entirety of independent media. The people who you would think would be on that were just nowhere to be found.
Yeah, the people that were in there, I mean, well, I guess this is Popular Resistance did some things too, but that's because they were there. Like, they were in the they were inside the so it's like, all right, that's a different thing. but yeah, I made a statement about, because that was happening right around the time of the Super Bowl. And again, that was another thing. It's like people were just going off on Maroon 5, the lead singer, what's his name, Adam Levine or something? Yeah, Adam Levine. He had like weird body art, and, you know, everybody's going off about that. And I was like, hey, you know, we're trying to like destroy Venezuela. Do you think this guy's weird tattoo placement can like wait a couple? Like, who gives a shit? And then, you know, and then I say that, and then I get attacked. I get shit on by a bunch of other comedians, you know, for making a statement that like, hey, your jokes about this bizarre pop culture thing doesn't matter when we are literally trying to we are literally in the middle of a coup of a major country. So who cares that Adam Levine doesn't have a sense of his own body's design? Like, he can decorate himself however the fuck he wants. Who gives a shit, right? Like, and then I get shit on, you know, for for making a statement like that. But that's, you know, again, it's just like that to me is what corporate media, mainstream media do, is that let's have this big distraction. Let's throw up the fireworks. You know, oh, are we trying to start a war with Iran? Hey, can Elizabeth Warren say something crazy? Can, you know? And then we go down this distraction politics thing, and that's another thing that people like don't know how to decipher, and that's why, you know, I and to kind of make a little bit of a correlation to what's going on today is now you see a very similar thing happening where there is a pretty massive movement going on, which in my opinion would be the first civil rights movement of my generation happening. And there is some real, like, you know, this is like some real revolutionary shit that we're talking about. And instead of doing that, it's just like, what if we paint Black Lives Matter on the street leading up to the White House? That's enough. And it's like, no, that's nice, thank you, but also, do you think you want to like change the way policing is done? Because that's kind of the fuck thing that we want, you know? And it's, but people go, well, they did that thing. Didn't you see how they wore the things and said Wakanda forever and ended racism? Like, didn't you?
That was a wonderful.
Did you know that during that photo op, like right before they went to go take that photo op with the Kente scarves, they had submitted text for their police reform legislation that included stripping provisions in the Freedom of Information Act. And then they went and like took a knee and the scarves. I know you got to split here soon, Chris. You brought up comedians who were doing the easy jokes and they got mad at you, you know. And there's my personal opinion is that corporate art isn't art because it's been ran through like a soul rendering process where they just remove all of, you know, the actual soul to it. And when I talk about, I mean, you know, sculptures or paintings or performances. And I feel like corporate comedians are just the worst, man. Like, it's such a fundamental waste of talent and energy and ability. And it makes me sad, and I would like your opinion as a virtually touring comedian.
I like that. I might have to snag that from you, Steve.
But yeah, I'd like your take on that. I would, and you're welcome to snag that too.
Virtually touring. I've done the corporate shit. Because, you know, I had to pay bills in my early 20s, and it sucks, man. I don't like it because I don't want you to tell me what I can't say. That's just a form of censorship to me, is all that is, right? That's always kind of what I looked at it as. It's like when YouTube puts up these weird rules of like, don't say this or we'll consider it misinformation and kick you off of our platform. You know, I felt like it's kind of the same thing. I every so often will get an email from somebody that wants me to come and it's like they find out that I'm an Indian comedian and they're like, oh, we're Indian too. Do you want to come and do this birthday party? And it's like, all right, we should have a talk before.
You're gonna have to know.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about socialism? For it, against it? What's so, but I don't like it because it's toning things down. It's making things very nice. Is sort of what it really does, right? To me, comedy is and all art really. I think all art that really captures the essence of like the human soul. If I can get a little philosophical with this, is like it's about challenging the status quo. That's always what it's about. It's always about looking at the world for what it is and saying, I think we can do better. But I'm not just going to come out and yell that at people or be angry, but I'm going to funnel this, emotional, kind of this emotional reaction that I'm having through another thing. Like I was talking to a friend of mine about this is like, I like talking about big, heavy things, or like what I'm doing now is, like doing these shows on Fridays. Like I have this very nice structure where I get to learn about new shit that I've always wanted to learn about. And then the way I really process it is by filtering it through comedy. That's how I figure it out. For some people, like it's through music, right? Through some people, it is through ranting about it. For some people, it's teaching it to other people, whatever it is, as long as you're challenging what's in place and saying, can we do better than this? That I think is the height of art, because I think art has always meant to question what the structures that are in place. So to me, the corporate comics are kind of validating the structures that are in place, and that's why I always, man, I used to hate those gigs. They used to pay really well too.
Oh,
like,
sure.
They were really, really well paying gigs. And I would know that, I could have gotten a couple $100s more out of them when they wouldn't argue at my first, when I would toss out a big number, and I would be like, oh, I'll do it for $500. And they're like, yeah, that's good. And I'm like, bah, shit, I should have said 9. I should have gone for, maybe I could have gotten a grant. Do you think I could have gotten a grant? Fuck it.
And I don't even fault like the guys, just doing the circuit corporate gigs to, get by. I don't blame those people. But it's like the John Olivers and the Stephen Colberts and these guys, the Trevor Noahs. I mean, gross.
Yeah, I got into a major back and forth with somebody because I'm not a big Trevor Noah fan. I was a huge Jon Stewart fan, and even on cable, there's an example of somebody that does have a big platform. He basically worked for Viacom, but still got away with chastising both sides and attacking one of their major advertisers, like multiple times a year. Like he used to go after Arby's all the time, and then Arby's was basically like, we can't really do anything because his show is massive. And if we push back, it was a bad PR move on there, but he was still challenging the status quo. Whereas I don't think Trevor Noah is. Trevor Noah is playing into that, in sort of this electoral pop politics of, well, Democrats good, Republicans bad. And it's like, that's not what it is at all. They're all bad, man. It's just I guess the varying scale of how bad they are, but you're not even going in to you're not even going into the nitty gritty. Stephen Colbert too is just like, man, you had one of the most revolutionary like satire shows on television, and now you're going and doing, Orange Man bad Cheeto Trump jokes.
Yup.
Which is like so upsetting to see. And John Oliver's another one. Is like, I was very fond of John Oliver's show because he was kind of doing something similar to what I was doing, where he was taking an idea and breaking it down and kind of going in depth and using, different clips from interviews and all that sort of stuff. And he was using all of these new tools that I had started to use in the content that I make on my channel. And then the first time that I remember kind of being like, oh, I think John Oliver's kind of a shill because he's making a shit ton of money, and I'm sure there is somebody behind the scenes saying you can't go after XYZ politicians, or you can't go after XYZ, whatever. Oh, you can't do this story because it's too closely connected to this corporation who's part of our advertiser, or whatever it is when he very, in my opinion, unfairly went after Jill Stein. To me, it doesn't even matter what you think about Jill Stein, right? You can like her, you can hate her. I thought she was fine. Did I think she was the best candidate for president? No, but I still, liked a lot of the things that she was saying. It doesn't, personal opinions aside, the way that he went after her was so unfair. And really the only thing that he had of merit to say was that she put out like a shitty pop hippie album in the early 90s. And I'm like, yeah, man, those songs aren't fucking great, but she's still talking about climate change more than Hillary Clinton
Didn't
is.
he do like 3 to 5 minutes on her being an anti-vaxxer? Wasn't that like one of the central parts of that construction?
Yeah,
John Oliver is narrative management for hipsters.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
He really is. And Trevor Noah, fuck, dude. I mean, it's just so, it's not even funny. And what lockdown taught us is that guys like Trevor Noah and Jimmy Fallon and the rest of the late night guys aren't fucking funny when they don't have that team of writers and they don't have time to rehearse and they don't punch it all up when it's just them doing what we're doing. The coronavirus turned all those guys basically into YouTubers because they're at home and they're doing their shit. We are so much more creative and we're so much better at that job, and we're funnier, and like at least 2 or 3 of us have nicer beards, and it's just and the people that we talk to, you are never going to see on their shows the information that those people have to share. My God, last week at this time, we were talking to Ray McGovern and Bill Binney, like about real life shit that matters. And I don't know who those guys were talking to, but they weren't giving verifiable, fact-based, fucking well-researched discussion about the things that dramatically affect our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I always say that, look, you don't have to do that in your comedy. Like if your comedy is more about escapism and the distraction, that's completely fine. Where I kind of have a problem is, I've gotten the criticism of, well, talking about the Fed isn't funny. And, it's not the funniest topic, but watch me. Because I'm gonna talk about it, and then I'm gonna figure out where the jokes go. And it's gonna be a little more challenging, and there might be a little while before I get to a punchline, but it's gonna be worth it and more substantive.
Personally, I thought that calling the Federal Reserve a capitalist system was pretty funny because the centralized distribution of wealth is fundamentally the direct opposite of capitalism, but it's a machination of the happenings of it, the accumulation of wealth and power. So I enjoyed that. I thought that was really good.
It's a niche market.
It is.
Get that joke. It's a niche market.
Those are the only jokes I make, though. So, but we really appreciate you joining us, Krish.
Thank you so much for having
Please-
me back.
Please let people know where they can find you, when your live shows are, and everything else that happens in between.
Yeah. So the virtual stand-up comedy shows that I do them through Zoom because it's if there's a bunch of people, that's the easiest way to manage all of that. So I do them through Zoom. I do them on Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And tickets are only $5. So I'm doing one this coming Friday on the 10th, July 17th. And then I'm doing a couple festivals. So then I switched to August 7th, August 14th, and then the 28th. And I'll probably honestly be doing them for the rest of the year. But all of the information will be is available on my website, which is krishmohanhaha.com. It's KRISHMOHANHAHA.com. And you can find ticket links there. You can find all of the videos that I throw up on my YouTube channel. All of my albums are available on there, as well as podcasts as well. So yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, hey man, you're welcome on any time. We really appreciate you joining us, especially at such short notice.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, this is fun. All right.
Cool. Well, before we transition into news, I do want to give a quick shout out to our GoFundMe as well as to the actions we have going on right now. The GoFundMe is to help us plan and execute 3 weeks of protests in DC. We're coordinating with other groups. We have everything from like in-street rallies, performance events, educational programs, stuff like that we're putting into place. We pretty much meet twice a week on it, more or less. So anything you can do to help share or donate to that really makes a big difference. The other thing is the action that we have going on this week. And what it is, for those of you who weren't tuned in the beginning, the president of Mexico will be meeting with Donald Trump in probably like 12 to 18-ish hours, I would assume. I don't know the exact time, but and the president of Mexico, President Obrador, is actually an outspoken supporter of Julian Assange. He has come out and said that it's basically war crime or crimes against humanity that are happening, that Julian's human rights are being violated and so on. So what we're hoping is that we can get a message to him to talk to Donald Trump about Julian's situation as someone who is a supporter. So we'll put both those links to the action as well as to the GoFundMe in the chat. Yeah.
So I don't. Where are we? We're at Article 3, the DM25. Okay. There it is. So I'll just jump in here. 10 years ago, a government case against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange would have made global headlines. Now, as Assange fights extradition to the United States from a courtroom in the United Kingdom, the same media organizations that worked with WikiLeaks to share stories of government misconduct remain silent about a case with an obvious negative impact on press freedom and democracy. Are we going to play this clip?
I think we should be able to. I don't know. I'm assuming they have some kind of Creative Commons license on it. So I think we'd be okay if we want to run it for a little bit. That's up to Josh. He's the mastermind behind that.
Yeah, I'll throw it on. Hold on.
I think we'll be okay.
You want to do that now, or you want to go through the article?
Go through the article first.
What was that, Josh?
I'd go through the
He
article
said go through
first.
the article first.
Okay. So jumping down a little bit, how WikiLeaks came to be. WikiLeaks began in 2006 out of a radical belief in transparency. The objective of the organization was simple: create an online platform for whistleblowers to make secret documents publicly available. Founder Julian Assange relied on prior experience in computer technology and privacy protection to build the organization. This included partaking in the early developments of encryption technology, as well as providing technical skills to help authorities expose an underage sex ring in his native Australia. This belief in encryption technology and exposing injustice made WikiLeaks stand out to whistleblowers. They could now share classified documents and evade detection with WikiLeaks' encrypted Dropbox. WikiLeaks' first big break came in April 2010 with the release of U.S. Army files provided by intelligence officer Chelsea Manning. Most striking from the release, hundreds of thousands of classified files from the U.S. Army about the war in Iraq, was the collateral murder video of U.S. soldiers fatally shooting 18 people, including 2 Reuters journalists. WikiLeaks followed the Manning leaks with the Afghan war logs, the Iraq war logs, Cablegate, and the Guantanamo files. The Cablegate files marked the largest and most newsworthy of these releases. WikiLeaks worked with Western media organizations, including the New York Times, The Guardian, Der Spiegel, Le Monde, and El País, to release 250,000 U.S. diplomatic cables. The information shared in these cables revealed U.S. spying on the UN and other world leaders, tensions between U.S. and allies, and corruption in countries throughout the world documented by U.S. diplomats. The disclosures of the 2010 through 2011 from WikiLeaks have been cited as a driving factor in the Arab Spring protests of 2011, ending public business done in private, and the beginning of what appeared as the golden age of whistleblowing. This appears to be a fairly long article if somebody else wants to jump in here.
Yeah, I'll pick it up. I don't know.
We're on the run.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
On the run, political pressure quickly grew against WikiLeaks and Assange. The U.S. government and financial institutions went after WikiLeaks on a multitude of fronts, shutting down donations, blocking access to the WikiLeaks website, threatening prosecution, and asking allies to open criminal cases against the organization. Specifically, its founder and spokesperson, Julian Assange. Confronted with mounting pressure on WikiLeaks, Julian fled to Sweden, where whistleblowers and journalists enjoy more legal protection. However, Assange was soon the subject of controversy in the country. 2 women accused the WikiLeaks founder of molestation and rape. A preliminary investigation was opened by the Swedish prosecution after Assange reported for questioning about the allegations. The rape allegation was soon dismissed, and the arrest warrant for Assange was dropped less than a day after it was issued. In the meantime, Assange relocated to London after his request for work and residency permit had been denied by the Swedish government. Upon hearing that an Interpol warrant for his arrest after the preliminary investigation was reopened by Swedish prosecutors, Assange turned himself over to the UK police. After initially receiving bail, the UK court soon issued his extradition to Sweden to answer further questions about the allegations. Fearing a sealed indictment in Washington that would lead to his extradition to the United States by the Swedish government, on June 19th, 2012, Assange skipped a bail hearing and took refuge in the Embassy of Ecuador in London. Do you want me to keep going?
No, it's all right. I'm not.
I can keep reading too.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
man.
Okay. We're on the embassy years, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On August 16th, 2012, Assange was granted political asylum by Ecuador's President Rafael Correa because of political persecution and prospect of an unfair trial in the U.S. Yeah, you think?
Say that
Assange
one more time. Say that one more time so it just resonates.
Come on, dude, I barely got it out the first time. All right. On August 16th, 2012, Assange was granted political asylum by Ecuador's President Rafael Correa because of political persecution and prospect of an unfair trial in the U.S. It's like the most Captain Obvious statement I've ever seen.
Well, and it's one of the most frequently, ignored.
Yeah.
Is what, because you always hear about like hit out or hold up in fucking or as he was, people flat out think that he was like dodging a rape warrant, and the facts on the ground have never corroborated any of those smears. It's so goddamn ridiculous. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No, it's fine, but they repeat it, so that makes it true, right?
Right? Well,
Okay, so Assange announced his asylum on the now famous balcony across from Harrods in London. While in the embassy, Assange continued to publish WikiLeaks material, including the Saudi cables and Stratfor leaks. The Saudi cables, can we just talk about sorry, damn it, we're never gonna get this. But can we just talk about the fact that he was like holed up in the embassy, full force of the United States government going after him, and he still published Vault 7. Like they still, like, it was right in the middle of all that. They still it's like.
And not only did he publish Vault 7, right? He also published Vault 7 without the CIA even fucking knowing that he had Vault 7.
Yeah. The most surveilled dude on the planet Earth ever. And yeah, I mean, I'm always amazed by what they're able to accomplish, really. And what they had, like, I don't know if I'd have the nerve to do that. Christ. I mean, that's.
The only way to lose a marathon is stop running.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, sorry, I'm gonna stop interrupting myself. All right, so the Saudi cables exposed the Middle Eastern kingdom's checkbook diplomacy to undermine Iran and their strong dislike for Israel. Meanwhile, the Stratfor leaks explored how the U.S.-based private intelligence company monitored activists, made payments to the controversial Pakistani intelligence service, and engaged in insider trading. Though most notable during this period was WikiLeaks' involvement in securing asylum for whistleblower Edward Snowden, which, again, super cool thing, you know? In the meantime, a tug of war continued between Assange and Swedish prosecutors, along with the US and the UK. The Assange legal team requested Swedish lawyers interview the WikiLeaks founder at the embassy in London or over video link. They declined until 2015, when lawyers from the Swedish government interviewed Assange at the Ecuadorian embassy. That's another thing that doesn't get talked about. People try to say that he refused to cooperate. That's bullshit. He, on multiple occasions, offered to speak with them, publicly, repeatedly. And nobody ever mentions that part. Okay, so the preliminary investigation was eventually dropped in 2019 after years of international pressure, including a UN panel describing Assange's asylum as arbitrary imprisonment and by UN Representative Nils Melzer as psychological torture. Shall I continue or no?
If you want to take another paragraph and then I'll jump back in after that.
Okay. WikiLeaks and Assange came under a different kind of pressure during the 2016 U.S. election. WikiLeaks was embraced by then-candidate Donald Trump during the heat of the presidential campaign, infamously claiming he loved WikiLeaks. After the release of emails from Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, John Podesta, showing quid pro quo foreign policy, financing by U.S. allies of terror group ISIS, and working to elevate Pied Piper candidates like Donald Trump to be Clinton's challenger. While U.S. intelligence claimed the Podesta emails were funneled to WikiLeaks by Russian-linked hacker Guccifer 2.0, they did not find any evident forgeries in the content of the emails. And there's just so much of this that is so misrepresented constantly in the media that this should be studied for like years to come if we manage to somehow survive this shitstorm that we're in as a species. This shit should be studied. Like, the decade-long campaign against Julian Assange, this one guy, is crazy. It's crazy.
And just to kind of drive home the point about the Podesta emails and Guccifer 2, we've spoken extensively with Ray McGovern over the last year, and we just and again, if you guys are watching right now and you missed last week's Tuesday show,
so good,
Ray McGovern and Bill Binney, please, between now and like the next time you see us, go watch that show. It was incredible. We found out new stuff. We found out stuff that none of us had ever heard Bill or Ray discuss before. And Bill Binney said unequivocally that Guccifer 2 was a CIA operation. So in terms of them, even in this article, saying the claim was that the Podesta emails came from Guccifer 2, that would essentially mean that the U.S. intelligence community is telling on itself in order to blame Julian Assange, which is just further emblematic of the fucking cartoon that we live in. Picking back up with the article, whatever admiration candidate Trump had for WikiLeaks was quickly lost after his entry to the White House. 3 months into the new administration, Trump's newly appointed CIA director, Mike Pompeo, declared WikiLeaks a hostile non-state actor. The agency worked behind the scenes with Trump donor Sheldon Adelson to spy on meetings Assange had with his lawyers in the Ecuadorian embassy. And again, this includes the goddamn women's bathroom, bugged by the CIA. Meanwhile, Democrat senators in the U.S. pressured Ecuador's new president, Lenin Moreno, to cut ties with Assange because WikiLeaks continued to undermine democracies globally by printing factual information about them. Wrap your noggin around that. Soon enough, Assange was accused of violating terms of his asylum by publishing material on new events in Ecuador, as well as commenting on the Catalonia independence movement of 2017 and leaking CIA spycraft tools with the Vault 7 release. Finally, Moreno allowed British police to enter the embassy and arrest Assange on April 11, 2019, marking the first time in history a government allowed a foreign law enforcement agency to enter its sovereign territory to arrest one of its citizens. I don't know if that's something that we've discussed here on the show or not. But that is absolutely monumental. And it shows the complete craven disregard that Five Eyes countries have for the laws that they have made, let alone the civil liberties and human rights of people across the planet.
Right, because the embassy, that idea of a sovereign state within a state, has existed for, it's one of those like time immemorial kind of things. Like that is land owned and occupied by the nation of Ecuador, independent from the laws of England. So for Lenin Moreno to literally just throw the doors open and say, come take this guy, it's literally a violation of some of the most fundamental international principles that exist in the diplomatic section.
Oh,
well, can we just take that even further though? Like, let's think about this, like, really. So an Australian journalist who also has Ecuadorian citizenship was living on Ecuadorian land that sits within the UK, and on the command of the United States, the UK authorities, or I guess Ecuadorian authorities, gave the UK authorities permission to storm in there and basically kidnap one of their citizens. And Julian Assange is not an American. WikiLeaks is not an American company. But the United States somehow has the authority to do something like that. Basically, the message that sends is that the United States can go after anybody, anywhere, anytime, if you embarrass them. Or if
it's not even the United States anymore. It's China. It's China as well. And Hong Kong. They are a separate country. Hong Kong actually just passed a law that says basically tech companies have to give us everything for our approval. It's essentially their version of the Earn It Act. And what it's allowing is for the nation of China or Hong Kong, whoever uses this, but in this particular instance, Hong Kong, to take any corporation to court for not complying with a Chinese demand for data access. And the way the law is written is it allows it to be used internationally. So in theory, if Julian's case is allowed to go through and set precedent that you can prosecute people that aren't your citizens and take them from countries that you have no legal jurisdiction over, that's going to allow the Chinese government or the Hong Kong government and any subsequent government thereafter to start putting these laws in place that allow them to scoop up citizens out of other nations. And this time it's an Australian and an Ecuadorian embassy in London being prosecuted by the US, but the next time it may be a German living in New Zealand being prosecuted by, I don't know, a West African dictator for publishing information about his war crimes. So it's going to allow any nation to grab anyone they want for publishing anything that harms that nation.
So real quick, I did just hear back from Dame Kathy Vogan. We had wires crossed on what time was what time and what country and whatnot, but she's still down to come on if you guys want to run a little bit late tonight. She should be on in the next like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we still have several bits of news to go over. And there's only one paragraph left on this article, and then we can roll the video. So let's go ahead and wrap the article here. The original case against Assange accuses the WikiLeaks founder of conspiring with Chelsea Manning in 2010 to commit intrusion of a government computer. This charge grew in May 2019 to 18 counts under the Espionage Act, which targets Assange as a publisher of government documents. Before Trump, the Obama administration considered charging Assange with the Espionage Act, a World War I based law used by the administration more than all predecessors combined. He's talking about the Obama administration there, but dropped their pursuit over First Amendment concerns. Specifically, if the government prosecuted WikiLeaks and Assange for revealing secrets, they would also have to prosecute U.S. news organizations and journalists like the New York Times and Washington Post. Such revelation seems to add legal protection to Assange despite the Trump administration's war on the press, a war which the WikiLeaks founder is scarcely mentioned as a casualty. Yet it has been revealed the judge overseeing the case, Vanessa Breitzer, has connections to corporations exposed by WikiLeaks. Recent developments are even more troubling for Assange, with indictment charges expanding in the scope. The reliance of U.S. prosecutors on evidence from a deemed psychopathic FBI informant who infiltrated WikiLeaks, and speculation about the fairness of the trial after the WikiLeaks founder was stripped naked and had legal documents taken from him. We at DiEM25 see Julian's trial not only as a free press issue, but more importantly, as a human rights concern. To lock away a journalist for exposing secrets defines authoritarianism. Recent events have showcased the increased deterioration of our democratic institutions. This year's COVID-19 pandemic and documented accounts of police brutality worldwide have shed light on the disregard of many democratic governments for their own citizens' lives. We need to protect people like Julian Assange now more than ever. Whistleblowers ensure the functioning of our democracies by revealing what is being done by governments in the name of citizens. As a movement committed to the belief that transparency makes strong democracies, we stand and will fight for Julian, WikiLeaks, and the free press. And then DiEM25 has a petition that they're circulating about, I guess it looks like it's from Don't Extradite Assange. And just one more time, for my own edification, this is not an extradition hearing. Julian Assange is not a U.S. citizen. he is an Australian citizen who's being incarcerated in the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom, where he's awaiting a show trial and a slow-moving kidnapping. Before we play that video, I'm very happy to announce that we do have our second guest this evening. It's probably my fault, Kathy. I'm sorry about that. I really thought I had the time difference down there. But please welcome to the show, Consortium News Live producer, but are you still doing the thing at University of Sydney?
Sydney Film School.
Sydney Film School. Okay, excellent. And Dame Kathy Bogan.
It closed down. It closed down for the lockdown.
Oh,
Most of the schools and universities, and I'm not quite sure what's happening with the school, but I kind of I added on a second job at the end of last year, which was to produce CNI. And thank goodness for that, because I can now work from home and didn't lose my lecturing job when the school closed down. And I feel very bad for Sydney Film School, because most of their exchange students, were coming from France and Sweden, and those kids are not allowed into the country now. So they're doing some correspondence courses, but and I've written to them, but it doesn't seem to be much life there at the school. So I really hope that not just Sydney Film School, but all of the other universities in Australia that are really struggling now because they lost their overseas students, and they're short of a quid now, and the government's not particularly helpful. So they're really struggling. So tertiary education in Australia, especially in the arts, I sincerely hope it kicks off again. I miss teaching, actually. So how are you?
I'm a little fired up this evening, but overall I'm sore. My day job has been killing me. Builder, and we're on this like never-ending series of decks. So the last 2 weeks have been nothing but like laying concrete, and now it's all setting posts and beams and whatnot. So I'm sore, but I'm very, very happy that you're here, and Krish Mohan was here earlier, fantastic guest. And I would like, if possible, well, before we get into the questions, I do just want to give a big plug to Consortium News Live. It is a tremendous program. There was a couple of weeks back in the chat, it was like all of us and like 3 other Assange groups, and it was like a little reunion while the show was rolling. But it's such a fantastic series, and both Joe and Elizabeth have been on the Assange Vigil here. Elizabeth Voss is, I believe, the most frequent guest on my other show, Slow News Day.
Right.
And I want to thank you guys for putting out that series, because you have had some of the most incredible people on that program, and you cover basically everything.
Well, we have particularly covered the Assange story. I think in one of our little fundraising things, Joe wrote that, and I think I did the poster for it as well, that we're the best. We're the best for that. I guess that was a claim we could make after we'd been to London, and we were doing up to 4 events a day. People who'd traveled from all over the world. This was in the week leading up to Julian Assange's first week of hearings, and we put that. I put that together as an extended extended show because it came up to, I think, about 3 hours of material. And, you know, normally we don't get that much time. Incidentally, thank you so much for saying it's a good show. You know, it goes together very quickly, and, you know, you have to follow the news cycle. I can take, and in fact, when I was a broadcast editor, I used to get 6 weeks to do a documentary, to cut a documentary, you know, a standard 52 minutes at the time. And that was once everything was filmed. You know, that was considered really, really fast, you know. You had to be a pretty good broadcast editor for that, to put together a doco. 6 weeks, that was luxury. We just don't get that kind of time anymore. The news cycle is so quick. But yeah, before I forget, I'd just like to do a plug for what's on tonight. And so we are doing a 2-hour live show tonight. And the first part is going to be, I don't know if you can screen share here, but it doesn't matter. I can just tell you
in the lower left-hand corner, all the way to the left, there's a little, looks like a monitor.
Yeah.
And
I see.
if you click on that, you have to go to whatever you select whatever browser you're running, and then what's open in your browsers will drop down. If it's a file or a photo you saved, then you need to hit application window
Yeah.
after you dig it out.
Okay, well, let me have a go. It shouldn't take too long to work out. Meanwhile, I could just talk. Application window. Let's just go to Photoshop. That's easy. Share. Et voila. So if I just make this a bit bigger. Can you see it yet?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Just made it a little bit bigger for you. Let's see if I can just do a full screen. Sorry, go up here. So this is fresh. Yes, what do you want? Sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's see, just go to full screen mode. Well, that'll do. So at 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern AEST time, we go live for the launch of Andrew Fowler's updated edition of The Most Dangerous Man in the World. It just became available online on the 2nd of July. So there's still time to, well, I mean, you can now buy it. You can buy it, of course, in the shops. But so Andrew very kindly sent us a copy of the book. I think it's somewhere around. Just hold on, I'll come back. I've got some more things to show you. The book. So, right, so I have to figure out how to get out of this stop sharing.
There's a blue button that says, there you go.
Done. So can you see this?
Yeah.
Right, so this, the most dangerous man in the world, you know, has been built by a lot of, you know, people who have followed the WikiLeaks story for, Julian story for 10 years or more, like myself. And this is the best book ever written. And now Andrew has added 3 new chapters, 3. And in particular, he goes deeply into the UC Global story. And what he specifically does is he tracks the digital footprint of the UC Global data. And if people are unaware, UC Global was a security company that was employed by the Ecuadorian government to guard the embassy. They never had guards before that. If you listen to Fidel Naves, who was the head of the chief of service at the Ecuadorian embassy for, I think, 7 years, 6 to 7 years, He says that they never felt the need to guard the building, to guard the embassy, but when Julian got there, a need was recognized to protect him, because we've even heard since that there were plots to poison him and break in, and he was awakened at 2:00 in the morning. This was announced in court that somebody was throwing things or trying to get in through the window, and he was woken up by, I think, a fire extinguisher falling over. But anyway, so Andrew has written about that, and one thing I can tell you is that he said that he couldn't track it the whole way to the CIA, but he could track it without a problem, and that's documented in this new edition, to the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice. Now, I should just tell you that the security company were apparently okay for a while. However, David Morales, who was the head of the company, went to a Las Vegas conference and met somebody there who persuaded him to work for a second client. And that was, the people on the other side who wanted to know everything that Assange was doing 24 hours a day, spied on his lawyers' privileged meetings between lawyer-client. That's sacrosanct in law, that you cannot spy. The prosecution cannot spy on the defense and find out what their strategy is. So this is, all of these violations, you would think any one of them would end the whole thing, but in Assange case, it doesn't. So also on doctors, people examining Julian, every single guest, his family, they were even apparently interested in the baby Gabriel's nappies.
Yeah.
To do a DNA test, and it just went so far that it was the local guards that approached, one of their local guards approached Stella Morris, the mother of Julian's children, and said, don't bring the baby back here anymore, because they're after the baby's DNA. They suspected that Gabriel was Julian's son. I mean, to look at him, you couldn't deny him. So I could understand them thinking that this might be Julian's son, but they wanted to confirm it, which is just crazy stuff.
Just real quick, that is one of the most just all around disgusting aspects about all of this. That UC Global, under orders from either the State Department or the CIA or both, was willing to root around in a trash bin to extract a diaper so that they could test the feces, just to have something to hold over, something else to hold over Julian's head. There's no other explanation for why they would want that.
Well, it's not that the people on the ground wanted it, right? Because this is a mercenary company. Like, that's ultimately the end of the day. I believe their owners actually credited in this court case was saying we're mercenaries or something along those lines. But it's not even the people on the ground, like those people that are mercenaries, those like former soldiers that did special forces that joined to do whatever is like thrill seeking to them, I assume. They don't want to get fucking diapers out of trash cans. Like that's why they told them. Sheldon Adelson, Rick Grinnell, all those like sleazy, slimy, dirty behind the scenes bastards. Those are the kind of people that want to get the diaper out of the trash can, because they're the ones that want to have something to hold up. So when that big tough war veteran guy gets told, hey, go grab that poopy diaper, he's like, what the fuck's going on? Like, this is crazy. At least that's kind of how I see it.
Well, I think, from what Stella says, the guard just felt very bad about it, about the intentions, what the purpose was. They knew what the purpose was. and they just thought that that was way below the bottom line. Why of course, as I was saying before I stopped to fill you in, so Andrew was able to trace the UC Global data that they had put in a lot of extra surveillance cameras and microphones, even in the fire extinguisher, even in the toilet, and that was being streamed to the United States. So Andrew Fowler was able to trace it to Department of Justice and to members of the Trump family and close associates. So that's very interesting. That's going to be, we will have him on, oh yeah, I've just been holding the book up again. Yeah, that's right, you can see this. So we're going to cross live for the opening of this, and Andrew Fowler will be interviewed by veteran journalist, the face of Australian news for 2 decades, Mary Costa-Peters, an amazing journalist and very bright mind, and somebody who's totally been with Julian, who, supportive of Julian, but also was one of the people who awarded him the Sydney Peace Prize back in 2011. Mary and Stuart Rees, Professor Stuart Rees, co-founders of actually I don't know if Mary was a founder, but definitely Stuart, founders of the Sydney Peace Foundation, and he got that award back in 2010. But Mary is very much on top of this story from go to woe, and it is woe, isn't it? So after that, as soon as the opening is over, then Andrew comes on to in with our 2 hosts for an in-depth interview as well. So that will happen. That will happen pretty well straight after. We hope that we can do the transition in less than 6 minutes. So stay tuned. I've got everything streamlined so that happens and everyone's on full alert to switch from one Zoom to the other, because they're doing the Zoom as well, because everybody's worried. We had a second wave, bad one in Victoria, in Melbourne, and now the new cases of coronavirus have shot into the triple figures again each day. So Victoria's borders are closed, but we had somebody come up from Victoria and just who had coronavirus and started working in the local supermarket for a couple of days at the checkout. So there's panic. So yeah, there would be a big spike in Sydney as well, but so far, fingers crossed, it hasn't happened. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. I'm sure there isn't a great deal of time left. The next thing is just a little thing I'd like to show you as well.
One of the quick things as you grab that I want to mention. Tomorrow, and this is probably like the 3rd time I think we've mentioned this on the stream, but I don't know if you knew, the president of Mexico, President Obrador, is meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow. And Obrador is an outspoken supporter of Julian Assange. He released a statement. This was, I think it was May of this year, maybe. But he says, "I express solidarity with Assange and hope that he is pardoned and freed. I do not know whether he has said that his actions were confrontational to norms or the political system, but the cables demonstrated is the workings of the global system and the authoritarian nature. These are like state secrets that have become known thanks to this investigation, thanks to these cables, and I hope that this is taken into consideration and he is freed and he is no longer tortured." So those were the statements this year by President Obrador. So what we're doing and getting our audience to do is send emails to basically every Mexican consulate in the whole world, hoping that someone there will forward on the emails that they're receiving to President Obrador, because right now he's in self-isolation. The White House required him to take a COVID-19 test yesterday. He is self-isolating today and then meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow. So it's a very unique situation where if we can get emails to him saying, hey, talk to President Trump about Julian Assange, this will be one of the first times that, at least to my knowledge, that an Assange supporter on the international stage has gotten to meet with Trump in this way. So I think that this is a really cool chance. And I'll put the link in the chat again to all of the emails for everybody.
Well, there's some very good news that just came through yesterday as well. I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but it's getting up there as well. So one of Julian Assange's lawyers, Eric Dupond-Moretti, so he's French, has just been appointed as the French Minister of Justice. And earlier this year, Dupond-Moretti launched a campaign to grant the Australian asylum in France. So that was him, and he's just been appointed Minister of Justice. So that's very bright and cheerful news as well.
That story is in the show doc that we prepare before each of these vigils. It's in the queue. We hadn't got to it yet. And yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. There's all these little, sparks that happen occasionally, which really in my mind started with the visit that rapporteur on torture Nils Melzer made last year, and his subsequent and frequent full-throated defense of why Julian Assange needs to be released immediately. And we because it's one thing for us as activists to be doing what we do. This is our 53rd consecutive week of these vigils, but we're sort of we're looked at as, oh, you're activists, that's what you do. If you weren't doing this, you'd be doing something else. When we're being outright dismissed by people. But when someone with the gravity of a Nils Melzer, or someone with the gravity as Dupond-Moretti is able to make these statements and get into a position of relative power like this, that's a significant moment that I feel like we should be hassling news outlets to cover, especially if they play in our sandbox, more independent outlets. We should be hassling them to cover this, because it's fantastic news, and it adds another dynamic to all this, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if you know what's been happening in Australia. People get to hear a little bit more about it now, because it's kind of a US, CN Live is a US Australian production, because that's where I am, and the producer. But this is very good news as well. So a whole lot of local councils, right up to cities in Australia, are declaring their support for Julian and calling on the government. So we have the city of Melbourne, we have the city of Fremantle, Lismore, which is a very large town, and about 5 other, Byron Bay, which is just a paradise that everybody should go to one day when they can. But around the country, the local councils are now writing letters to the government. The first really big one was the city of Melbourne, which of course is Julian's hometown. So it was very touching that Melbourne voted almost unanimously. There was just one person who abstained, but the other 9 people on that council voted to, push the government to save our guy, right? So Don't Extradite Assange are calling on campaigners to ask local authorities all around the world. This is a movement that can come from the ground up, but it's kind of like at a political level, especially those twinned with Australian cities that have already jumped in to to fight for him. Of
There was
course,
we
yeah,
had
go
a
ahead.
city councilwoman from Australia on a couple weeks ago. I can't remember her name.
Philippa Veach.
Philippa Veach. And when she was on, I had mentioned the idea of contacting, it's called like the League of Mayors, I believe, but it's a global organization that's built one mayor at a time. I think it's the Council of Mayors, something like that. But I think that would be a really cool institution to try to educate on Julian Assange and get them in support, because that would be ground level government across the globe at that point that you could reach by working with an organization like that.
I think that's really especially important in the UK, and we do have Australian cities that are twinned with UK ones. But you know, if we could get London, we would possibly nail it. So that just one last thing I wanted to show you, and this is one of mine. It's a I'm showing you my artwork.
Hell yeah.
So it's of course it's Monopoly, but it is the WikiLeaks version of Monopoly, and every one of those these four are the utilities are the countries: UK, Sweden, Ecuador, and the United States that have been torturing him. And every one of these is an edition, a WikiLeaks edition. You go around.
Oh, wow.
Can we try to find a way to get that into a shop somewhere?
That's amazing. That's so amazing.
And this is, what does it say? Collect another award. When you land here, you collect another award. And here, like, you know, goes straight to Belmarsh, etc. So I've had this sitting around for a while, and I put up the file on Twitter so that people could just download it and do it themselves. But it cost me about $50 to put it on canvas, and now it's playable. However, I've got the cards. And of course you can't play Monopoly without your chance. And of course, you know, there's been a lot of bad luck, but also good luck for Julian. So I'm looking forward to doing the chance cards. Yeah, it could be. I made a mask for Julian, not for him. Well, it'd be good if he could wear it, but for supporters of Julian, which says, which Christine, his mother, thought was quite a good idea. So that's in the WikiLeaks shop now, and that's Save Julian from COVID-19. And I spoke to Bean about it, and Bean has done a few designs as well for people who didn't want COVID-19 written on their face. I understand, but in fact, that is the crucial factor that could take him out at any moment. That is the immediate threat, and that's the message we need to get home, that, you know, prisons being petri dishes. I think that there's a prison in the United States where I actually looked about 3 weeks ago, 75% of the prisoners have coronavirus. And poor Julian has a chronic lung condition. I remember his dreadful cough, which became apparent about 2013. It might have been around before then, but he has a rasping cough. If you look at cypherpunks, I don't know if you know what that is. That's one of two of the episodes of The World Tomorrow. You can hear him coughing occasionally there, but he has, you know, in every speech that he gave, you could hear him constantly trying to clear his throat. So he's got this chronic condition. In 2016, John Pilger came and spoke in Sydney, did a terrific speech. We've got it on Consortium News now because I filmed it for Politics in the Pub with a second person. And I was right underneath John, so great sound for that. But anyway, he talks about Julian's father's letter to Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister. In that, he says that Julian, you know, has needed an X-ray for years to determine what this lung condition is. They won't. The British wouldn't let him go to the hospital. Obviously, the X-ray unit couldn't be brought to him. He has other serious conditions. He needed root canal therapy. He's had 2 years of toothache. The last time I spoke to Christine in an interview, so that would be 4 years now. But you know, it's something to be aware of, that we have to keep fighting. And Doctors for Assange have been really excellent. They've written another brief but superb letter chastising those who can pull the strings to just get him bail with an anklet, you know, and back to his family and to a bit more safety. But they haven't, and Doctors for Assange have warned them that they can be held culpable, responsible for that, because it's just in the law. It's a bit like the, I suppose you've all heard of the Eichmann excuse. Eichmann, and from Nuremberg. So to even to, neither I was just following orders, nor I sat passively by and let it happen, is any good. And that's what we were all saying about, you know, in defense of Chelsea Manning. You know, when you see a war crime, you have a duty to report it, but also to not let it happen to the best of your ability, which is, you know, what she tried to do. And one of those leaks was really, really important, because that one from 2006 with the slaughter of 10 civilians, Iraqi civilians, that was what, including 5 children, you know, just execution, basically.
And that's they're
end of the war, sort of.
What does it say to you that the U.S. isn't including the collateral murder video in their charges against Julian Assange?
Well, in fact, it's not. It's very cute of them the way they've done it. They don't specifically mention it, but what they do have in the indictment relates to the rules of engagement. And Manning released the rules of engagement. So these are rules whereby US soldiers can launch an attack, engage, as they call it, euphemistically, with the enemy. It's funny because engagement usually is a nice thing where you're going to get married one day, and it's you know, a dysphemism, as they call it. It's engage has totally changed its meaning for most of us, because now we think of it as killing people. But Manning released the rules of engagement from their archives to prove that they had not been respected. Now, with the people who were in the street, including the 2 Reuters journalists, I mean, it was easy to explain that maybe they thought that the camera was a weapon, but certainly the second part where they opened fire on the van, the Good Samaritan's van that stops to rescue one of the Reuters journalists who has not yet died. And that's a very touching story that Dean Yates, from, you know, who was the bureau chief of Reuters, brought forward, that the generals came, I think 3 generals, he said, came to show him, because Reuters had been trying to find out what had happened to their journalists, you know, and they came and showed Dean Yates and made him sign a non-disclosure, a little bit of it, and I think right up to where the people in the street are fired upon, that's where it stops, so as not to upset him. But they didn't show him the second part, which is clearly a war crime. That's what violates the rules of engagement, to open fire on a wounded person that people are trying to rescue. This is obscene. As Manning said at the time, it was like somebody was holding a magnifying glass on ants. And, you know, that level of cruelty, you know, and also the sound from what he didn't hear was the audio either, which was the point of it, right? Which was what those dudes, a crazy horse ate, was actually saying. You know?
Look at those dead bastards.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And even so, after that, there's another war crime that happens that can be pointed out really obviously, and that's the running over of the bodies.
Of course.
When the vehicle pulls up, the U.S. troops pull up to secure the scene. They're literally just running bodies over and joking about it, and that's a part that's not really. That's one of the most uncomfortable things in there. Is the fact that like they just slaughtered these people and then have the goal to laugh as they get run over.
Well, folks, you'll see in the indictment mentioned a few times Executive Order 13526, which is, you know, the classification system, basically. Information is classified as confidential, secret, top secret, and there are various subdivisions within that. And so all of this, the definition of what level, you know, like could cause harm, will definitely cause harm to United States national interest, etc., national security. But what they don't talk about is section 1.7, right? So this is put in at 2009. Section 1.7 is, you know, what they call Obama's law. So section 1.7 of Executive Order 13526 makes it illegal to classify evidence of a crime or anything that causes embarrassment to a government. So look out for section 1.7, because what that tells us is things like collateral murder and a lot of other atrocities should never have been classified in the first place. And in fact, collateral murder wasn't. It was never classified. It was, according to Manning, this is going back a long way, but I remember Manning saying that this video had been sitting on the shelf for a couple of years and he didn't know. And after he looked at it, she looked at it, I should say she now, she said, so that's what that is. And it was the footage from the Baghdad airstrike in 2007, which was reported quite differently. That Reuters were told that their soldiers were killed in a confrontation, right, with insurgents, and that wasn't the case at all. When Dean Yates came out, he said that there were other Reuters journalists who were on the ground, and they didn't see any skirmish, and they also got what's his name? The photographer. Anyway, sorry, I just forget the photographer's name, but one of the Reuters journalists who were killed, they recuperated his camera and they saw the last photos that he'd been taking. They got all the photos leading up to the collateral murder. There was no sign of violence at all. And then very, very weirdly, about 3 hours after he died, somebody used his camera to take a photograph of another American soldier sitting outside a tent. In the Reuters article, that person's face has been pixelated, so you can't recognize it. But my mind started going to wondering if that was in fact Crazy Horse H who had done the damage, because the soldier is looking down and looks a little bit ashamed. Anyway, that's me going off in my but who is that person? So this was a complete lie that they were told. I mean, if you look at the very important leak as well from 2006, and that's what I was referred to before, of the 10 civilians who were summarily executed, shot. they sent, and so that was 10 people, including 4 women and 5 children, just executed. What happened after that is, I think that the soldiers went a bit bananas that day, and apparently that happens. David McBride from Australia said he was a soldier in Afghanistan. He's a military whistleblower in Australia. He said that happened. But what happened after that is that at a higher level, an airstrike was staged, and they bombed the place where these people lived in order to hide the evidence of what they had done. Just shot people in cold blood, including kiddies. So all of these things, you know, they should never have been classified. This is the problem. We have to maybe get into Executive Order 13526 and sort out what was illegally classified in the first place, because it does reveal a war crime, or it does conceal a war crime, the classification, or cause embarrassment. And then, you know, anything that was revealed, there's got to be some kind of way that, you know, some kind of body that checks in the first place. You can classify this or you can't. But getting into that security state is very, very difficult. It has to be done at a higher level. As far as I know, Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7, this exemption hasn't been practiced. So that's rather a pain.
Do you think there's any chance that could be brought up in court?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. But I mean, I think that the court would probably, certainly in the British court, would say that is not a subject for this court to discuss. And maybe in the United States, it would be, that's none of your business, right? It's up to us to decide what gets classified or not. It's not a defense to expose something, but this is a situation, this is a crisis, really. This classification system, I mean, I spoke to Daniel Ellsberg some years ago. It was in beginning of 2012, and he was telling me about a study that Stephen Aftergood had done about the classification system, and he went through and he you know, Ellsberg had always worked with people who were more or less on the inside, and so I did this interview with Ellsberg, and he was saying that according to Aftergood's report, what still needed to be classified. So, you know, you get this example of the invasion of Normandy. Of course, this must be classified, but, you know, a week after it happens, does the location still need to be a secret? Because it's history now, right? It's, so anyway, going through anything that didn't need to be classified in the first place, and what shouldn't be classified anymore, Aftergood had concluded that what really needed to be classified, that was classified today, was 1/2 of 1%. And 99.5% of what is classified was really to protect people's reputations, their jobs, and save embarrassment and probably hide crimes.
And that's, I mean, largely why classification shouldn't exist. Because I don't know, the things that actually would potentially need to be kept secret are so minuscule, like you're saying, that the system itself, just like everything else, will just be completely abused.
Yeah. So yeah, just going back to really make it clear, everyone has said that they didn't mention, and it's worth saying that they didn't mention in the indictment the collateral murder video, but they, you know, there are quite a number of years, I think 40 years or something. It was Christian Hrafnsson who said, in relation to the rules of engagement and of the 175 years that Julian is facing, I think it was about 40 of those years. I could be wrong in the number, but it was something substantial. It was decades that corresponded to the rules of engagement, which relates to not only the collateral murder video, but also that slaughter of the 10 civilians and the airstrike. But when that finally came out, that leak, and that was a really great thing. It came out in 2011, 10. But in 2011, when the Iraqi government and the Iraqi people heard about what had really happened, they were so disgusted that there was an enormous pressure on the Iraqi government, and they decided that they were not going to give American soldiers immunity anymore. So if they committed crimes, they would find themselves in a court of law. So I mean, it's dreadful that soldiers deployed to Iraq. Obama decided he would have to withdraw the troops. So that was a very, very positive consequence of WikiLeaks release. So it would have to be withdrawn. It didn't end the war, but I mean, it sort of neutralized it to some extent. But it's terrible when you think about it, that it has to be the threat of another government prosecuting US troops if they commit war crimes rather than their own government. Because they, their own government, their own military had the proof, but they seem to get away with it.
That's a hell of a point there. That really is. That if if our own government was interested in following the rule of law, we would not be trying to, black bag Julian Assange in broad daylight in a courtroom and rendition him to a black hole in a supermax prison. This whole process, and we're gonna wrap in the next like 5 or so minutes. But this whole process from really like 2006, 2007 on, going the way that Julian Assange has been targeted and the number of different countries that have played a role in his targeting, and the same with WikiLeaks in general. It is a living history of the erosion of rule of law.
Well, that's right. That's right. Behind a wall of secrecy, and this is a 20th century phenomenon. Not that the secrecy is, but the organized secrecy, the CIA, and this whole idea that people in Parliament couldn't know these things, even politicians couldn't know these things, but especially the public. But the whole CIA thing, and it's really at odds with the age of information. There was bound to be a clash.
Yeah.
One day. I think that was an accident that they didn't see waiting to happen. Otherwise, we'd never have really got the internet. Except it was Tim Berners-Lee decided to give it to humanity, would not sell it. But when Berners-Lee wrote HTML and made a gift of that to the world, so that all different kinds of computers could communicate with a common language. He had this idea. He had two ideas. One that primarily, I suppose, for him, because he was a scientist working at CERN, that people could look up anything they needed to know, right, rather than having to walk to their local library and rummage through books, which is always a pain as far as I was concerned. But also, and very importantly, there was a second point, that everybody would have a voice. That this would be a two-way exchange. People would not just be passive recipients of whatever information they were given, but that people could actively seek, receive, and impart information, which is Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, across all frontiers and on every kind of platform. So we have this, these secrecy orders, imposed, which are in direct conflict with the Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And you've got one country that is fighting against this universal law, except that Universal Declaration of Human Rights and international law, we don't have a body that really upholds it, Maybe that's where the work needs to be done at a legal level. But of course, there's all kinds of world politics that would probably be blocking that. But we're all standing by, going, "But this is breaking international law." Not that local laws haven't been broken as well. When Julian was ejected from the embassy, extradition was banned, was illegal for all Ecuadorian citizens. And, overnight, Moreno claimed that, his citizenship's gone, right? So we can kick him out. But there was due process in Ecuador. It's threatened with getting their citizenship taken away from them. There is a process of appeal. None of that happened. But, you've got this might is right thing that is stomping all over international law and human rights. And it's got to be fixed. It really does. If our world is going to, go back to law and order, but I don't think it was ever there. There were always these secrets. It's just that we didn't know that there were things we didn't know. Oh gosh, I sound like somebody speaking now, don't I? But we're a lot more aware of what we don't know now.
But the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, and there are none unknowns and unknown. Oh man,
that guy.
Wow. Andrew, would you like to take us home here?
Yeah, absolutely. And just as we're parting, to cap this all off, Mike Pompeo is going after the members and family members of the International Criminal Court for investigating U.S. war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that's an ongoing thing that kind of is running parallel to Julian Assange's persecution and the global lockdowns that we're seeing. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate you joining us. And I would really, again, like to encourage everyone to help us share our GoFundMe link, but also participate in the action to get President Obrador to talk to Donald Trump about Julian Assange. I'll put both of those links in the chat here in just a second again. But yeah, I want to thank Steve, Misty, and Kathy for joining us. If you like what you have been watching, you can find us on Twitter at action_4Assange, or on our website, actionforassange.com.
Kathy, where can people find you, and where can people find CN Live?
Oh, so go to the Consortium News website, consortiumnews.com, and all one word. And there is a CN Live page. You'll see it in the menu bar, the horizontal one. So if you go there, we've got every episode in there, or just go to YouTube, and we have a YouTube channel. There is another Consortium News YouTube channel, but that was Bob Parry's actually for a while. But so there's 4 videos on there, but I got them all and I have put them on our new channel. So you'll see it's his face in red. That's with all the videos. We've got a couple of 100 films now since we started back in July last year. In fact, CN Live is about to have its first birthday. So wow, that's gone very, very quickly. We're up to season 2, episode 12 tonight with Andrew Fowler, and episode 13 is going to be Whitney Webb again, talking about Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein story, and that's coming maybe tomorrow as well. So we're doing 2 back to back, so I've got to get back to work. Oh, one other thing I just would really like to tell you, it's something that is really worth watching. So speaking of Andrew Fowler, it's on YouTube. You can find it now. You can watch the whole documentary. So it's called Sex, Lies, and Julian Assange. So this is the whole early story of Sweden. But there's a lot of things in there that fill in the story concerning the Manning period. And also what you see, and I was just taking a brief look at it, just preparing for the tonight's show. So what you'll see in there as well is the subpoena from the grand jury subpoena, So this is going back to 2011. So this was Andrew Scoop. He was the first to reveal the existence, showed the evidence of a grand jury inquiry. And in fact, that one there is what has, a lot of that has come out in this very latest indictment. So it's really interesting to go and look at that backstory. Sex, Lies, and Julian Assange, I think easily the best documentary as well that has been made about the Assange story.
Noted. I have that pulled up now.
It's brilliant. It's very, very good. It was on Four Corners, the ABC, national broadcaster.
And where can people find you at, Missy? And some final thoughts.
Well, I just want to thank, you guys for having me on again. Thank both of our guests that we had tonight. They were both great. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. And actually, I just hooked up with a friend of mine. We're hosting some shows together. Last week, we interviewed Dan Cohen about Israel. And that was really cool. Like, we're like a little tiny baby channel, and we really don't know what we're doing. And you guys know me, I'm super like awkward, and so we're figuring it out. And but we just want to, like you guys do, like we just want to cover the shit that doesn't get covered by anybody else. We want to talk about stuff that we're getting ready to launch. What will end up hopefully being a series of shows on missing and murdered Indigenous women. So we have a Native American historian coming in this week to interview. So yeah, really excited about that. It's just fun. Like, it's just, we just really want to cover some of the shit that doesn't get any attention.
What's it called?
Facts on the Ground. And then, my co-host is Jesse Zerwell. So, yeah, it was cool. Like last week, we had like our first, like, I actually interviewed with him. It was his show that he started, and I interviewed with him maybe like about a month or so ago, and we just really hit it off and had like a really cool conversation. So we decided to team up and try doing some shows together. And yeah, it's been fun so far. So again, baby channel, still trying to work it out, but yeah, it's cool.
That's
But
awesome.
thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it always.
Congratulations. I'm really stoked for you. I am. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
It's about time. My name is Steve Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day. You can find it on YouTube by typing in Slow News Day Podcast. I'm also on the Rockpin, Indie Live, and hopefully a couple more platforms soon. Thank you to everyone watching right now. We love you guys. We do. You guys are the best. I say this, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too, but I really do have the best chat on YouTube. There's just nothing but absolute love and laughter and learning. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Dame Cassie Vogan, for being here with us tonight. I'm sorry about the time confusion. Thanks to Krish Mohan. He's always wonderful. Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos. Mean Panda for the graphics. My co-host tonight, Andrew Smith, Misty Winston. We will see you Saturday. Good luck to us all.
Bye, guys.